another breath. Been chasing dreams, but I never slept. I got a new attitude and a lease on life is a piece of mind. Seeking to find I can sleep when I die. Want a piece of the pie, got the keys to the ride and shit. I'm straight. I'm on my way. I'm on my way. Get up my way. I'm running late. What can I say? I heard you died twice. Once when they bury you in the grave, and the second time is the last time that somebody mentions your name. So when I leave here on this earth, did I take more than I gave? Did I look out for the people, or did I do it all for fame? Legend is Exodus, searching for euphoria, trudging through the mud to find the present, no ignoring. I got 20,000 deep up in the street like we some warriors. My mama told me never bow your head. Whoa.
I feel glorious, glorious. Got a chance to start again. I was born for this, born for this. It's who I am, not good to forget. I made it through the darkest part of the night, and now I see the sunrise. Now I feel glorious, glorious. I feel glorious, glorious.
I'm feeling glorious. The crib looking victorious. Oh yes it is. You know that we've been going it. Since we hopped out that DeLorean. Yeah we went. On guard, things are just things. They don't make you who you are. Can't pack up a U-Haul and take it with you when you're gone. We posted on the porch, my family's glasses to the stars. My grandma smiling down on me like, whoop, that boy got bars. Okay, yes I do. I said amen and hallelujah, let me testify to another morning. A morning, won't let self get in my way. I got my breath, I got my faith, and I remember why I came.
Feel glorious, glorious. Got a chance to start again. I was born for this, born for this.
Hello. How's everyone doing tonight? Excellent. I like the claps. We usually say you braved the cold to join us, but I guess you braved the heat. It's like crazy warm out there, just like walking across the campus. I give you guys credit for showing up. So thank you for joining us to our College Career Center Senior Family Night. We're really excited you are with us. We hope you enjoyed that video, parents and guardians. You guys, if there's seniors in the room, I see several. Hopefully, this is the second time viewing. We've watched this a dozen times, and every time I get energy from it. It's just such a great recap, hopefully, for you guys as seniors, and hopefully families that you kind of watch the evolution of your student and just the experiences that have marked the last 3 to 4 years of high school. My name is Dan Miller, one of the post-secondary counselors here.
And I'm Sarah Hansen. Most of you probably are more familiar with Sarah English. I got married over the summer, so my name has changed, and my email has changed, so please make a note of that.
And a couple housekeeping notes. So thank you to the 50 of you or so that are here in person. We love seeing you. Back in the pre-pandemic days, we used to kind of sell out the room, sometimes standing here remotely. So things have changed a little bit. So thank you to those of you who are joining us on Zoom. If you're on Zoom, it's a Zoom webinar. So what that means is, obviously you hopefully can see and hear us. We cannot, of course, see you or see your faces on Zoom. There is a Q&A, I believe, open if there are questions, although as you can see, we're gonna be on stage. We are not monitoring the Zoom. We'll be dropping some links and resources in Zoom for you that are joining us, if you wanna kind of follow along with us. And we will post the recording of this presentation within about a week. So we'll send it to the communications team at school tomorrow. And it takes a couple of days usually for them. So hopefully either before the end of the long weekend or certainly early next week, it'll be on demand for you guys to sit as a family and grab your popcorn and watch this over and over again until next year, until we redo it. So, but we're glad you're with us. We hope this is a really informative evening. This is our, I guess, 9th time doing this presentation. This is different because in the past we used to say it was our 30th time doing it. We did this presentation over one school day about 10 days ago on this August 16th, so a week ago Friday, to all of your seniors out of their English classes in that room in the recital hall. So some smaller groups, we had some bigger groups. So if you, again, are as a student, you're hearing this for the second time, it's gonna be a similar presentation. We've adjusted a couple things for you guys as parents or guardians, but it's a presentation we're really comfortable with because we have done this in a similar nature with updates for many years. We're really excited to be with you and share some hopefully good and informative resources.
And we joked with your seniors, like it was the end of their first week. We're like, welcome back, hooray, you're seniors, now let's talk about life after Stevenson, which felt a little abrupt, but we know our inboxes are already getting slammed with individual questions. So we want to make sure we're getting out to you guys all the information and the frequently asked questions that we're receiving. So again, Dan and I, we actually now have split caseloads new last year for our juniors. So if you do have older siblings and haven't met with us already, know that we now kind of split the class of about 1,200 seniors is what we have. So Dan has half of those and he works with the counselors on the west side. I'm on the east side and I work with the counselors on the east side. So students should be directed to the post-secondary counselor that aligns with their counselors. They're working with us individually at all. But we do a lot of group things together and a lot of group presentations, so they're welcome to either one of those. These are our goals for tonight. We're going to talk a little briefer about the options after high school, just making sure that everyone understands the different options that are out there and how we support all of those avenues. And then we go pretty deep into the 4-year application process. When we polled the kids, I think you probably saw something similar. I would say 3/4, if not more, of our students had already started a Common App account back on August 16th. And almost all of them had reported starting on their essays, which mom and dad, you should be really happy and thrilled to hear too, right? That's exciting to know. And then we're going to talk about the senior year calendar, which hopefully you grabbed that handout as you guys walked in, and those on Zoom, we'll put a link into that toward the end of our presentation. We do have a military week every year. We have shifted where our military week is this year. It's now going to be during the week of March 4th. So during the day, we'll have all the branches come in, the National Guard, the reserves, the academies, and they'll talk with our students during that time. We also offer the ASVAB in-house during a late arrival that week, and the ASVAB is the Armed Service Vocational Aptitude Battery Test. It's a mouthful to say, but it is required for anybody who's looking to enlist, and it's a career assessment, but also tells students their skills and where they can place. The different branches have different cut scores that they're looking for. In addition, that week in the evening, we're going to talk about a career expo that we're doing, but the military will be invited in the evening that night as well, so families can come in and talk with the recruiters and the reserves and National Guard and talk as a family with them as well. So that'll be highlighted later on in the presentation. Actually, next slide, I lied.
She was getting you excited about it.
So we know some of our students are not wanting to maybe explore formal education after high school for a variety of reasons. They would like limited to no or direct education related explicitly to their careers. So we have expanded on this every year. We've kind of moved this to an expo in the evening. And these are for all sorts of careers. I think a lot of times families think this is like only like construction and plumbing and welding. This also includes real estate agency and cosmetology and vet tech and medical assisting and police and fire, cosmetology. So we invite families to come in that night to hear about that. And again, the military will be there this year as well. So you can mark that date. It's on the timeline that we provided for you guys to come in and learn more about those careers. And then we also have CLC on the grounds that night and a couple other local community associate programs that will talk about their programs and their certificates for students directly. Ms. Travis is our career resource specialist. She's joined us on almost every evening prior up to this, and then for seniors, we say, it's okay, take a night off, Jamie. But she's also located in the College Career Center. She can help students with exploring possible careers to help them figure out maybe majors that they're considering. She emails them frequently about presenters that are coming in during the day or career talks that are happening in the evening. I think she just, Mr. Miller, your memory is probably better than mine. She just sent one out for neuroscience.
I think it's like a bioengineer or medical scientist, something like that.
Okay. Have your students check their email. Yeah. But she sends those out frequently for students to connect with people in the profession. And then in addition, she has a website that can be explored by students to learn more about her resources that are in there too.
Okay, we have been including this graphic in a lot of our presentations to kind of illustrate for students and for families. We find this is a pretty helpful infographic of kind of what the map looks like for students potentially as you navigate beyond high school. So I told you guys as seniors who've heard this before, that you're all firmly in that green bubble right now. You're finishing that high school diploma. Hopefully, knock on wood, that will be done in May. You'll graduate, of course. Then you have a couple options. We just talked about some non-educational options, the Career Ready Trades Expo, military, et cetera. But if you have trouble seeing it, if you're towards the back, the top bubble says community college. This is a variety of different program opportunities. There are some short-term certificate programs available where you could do a certificate in just a variety of maybe even weeks to months in a variety of different disciplines that could help with educational training. There are certificates all the way through 2-year associate's degree programs, which could be done full-time or part-time depending on what students were up to, if they're working or not. That would be an Associate of Arts degree that could be then transferable to a 4-year college or university, which is that bottom bubble where students would pursue a bachelor's degree, Bachelor's of Arts, Bachelor's of Science being the most traditional. And then beyond the undergraduate side, you've got graduate school, so master's degree programs may take 1, 2, maybe 3 years, again, depending on your pacing. And then professional programs like medical school, law school, et cetera, or a doctoral degree that we gave it a range of 3 to 8 years, but it really depends on how quickly the research is done for a given student. So that's kind of down the road. But just to kind of throw the landscape out there, what the journey might look like from now as a high school senior through kind of the rest of adulthood potentially. We're also going to have a community college week in the spring semester. We're going to do it the week of February 3rd to the 7th. So we'll invite a few area community colleges to Stevenson. So we'll have the College of Lake County, of course, we do a lot of work with in the second semester. So if you're a senior and you're thinking about community college, specifically the College of Lake County, we'll have a field trip that we've been doing for many years to CLC, hopefully in early second semester. We're going to have some application workshops. We're going to offer the testing here on campus for math and English if you need it for the placement of your classes, and you'll meet with an advisor here at school. We do that all in-house to make it really convenient for students. And then we'll also invite other community colleges like Harper College and other area community colleges where our students tend to gravitate toward, and we'll have some other resources kind of during that week. Okay. So college visits, we asked your seniors when we met with them about 10 days ago, did they participate in a college rep visit as a junior? So I'm actually kind of curious just to get you guys involved. If you're a parent or guardian, how many of you know or think that your student participated in a college rep visit as a junior last fall here at Stevenson? Okay, I see some hands. Cool. Well, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. We have programming that's hopefully designed really for juniors and seniors. We told your seniors that this is a really cool, unique opportunity to engage with colleges, really from all over the world, and I mean that quite literally. We have people that recruit Stevenson students from colleges overseas. Sometimes they live in the Chicagoland area, or they represent like a Midwest office, but they go to schools in our area. And they're essentially 45-minute informational meetings about the college. So the college admissions person, who typically is responsible for recruitment to either Stevenson or the county or maybe the state or the whole region perhaps, they will come here, talk about academic programs, student life, the admissions process, and really take students' questions. So if it's a smaller group, and many of them are actually quite small and very personalized, they'll really want to know, and they'll direct questions to students of like, what are you interested in getting out of this visit? What are your goals? What can I help you with? Here's my information. Let me help you with the application. So it can be like almost like a little mini application workshop in some ways too, which is pretty cool. We told your students that we have our growing list of college rep visits in a variety of places. We've got them on the College Career Center website. We also have them in Naviance, and we're building that list quite literally every day. Our team member, Caroline Hilley, who's in the back controlling the Zoom, she is connecting with colleges pretty much every day at school. And I think as of the end of last week, we were closing in, and maybe at this point are exceeding over 100 different college rep visits that are scheduled at Stevenson. This is a convenient night because Wednesday afternoon starts our college rep visit season in earnest. Purdue University will be in one of our bigger spaces, I believe in the West Auditorium. And we're gonna really have visits kind of growing from that point where most days we'll have, upwards of maybe even a dozen or so visits, sometimes 2 during the same period, and the 2 of us facilitate all those sessions. So we'll be in that room, making sure the visit's going well, making sure everyone's kind of on task. But we're also, more importantly, in our opinions, and this is also helpful for us as counselors, we're going to be taking very thorough notes during the visit. So if you go into Naviance, there's sort of a yellow section that's called counselor notes. Those are actually our notes that we've been building for a decade, probably or longer. They've been historically there for a very long time. We continue to kind of expand those notes with current information. And we talk about academics and student life and all the sort of topics that the college rep visits will focus on. And we're literally just typing those notes. And as soon as the rep visit's over, we publish it, and that's immediately available for students, for you guys are getting a snapshot of these visits. And they are available for students that miss the visit as well. We ask that students, and we've told this to your students in a variety of ways, in person and through email, to connect with teachers 2 days before each visit to make sure we and they know where you're gonna be during a given time, right? So we're kind of using kind of an honor system where if your teacher says it's okay, you can join us for that visit and feel free to join us. We've told students that most of the visits will be in the College Career Center, so in the west side of Stevenson, but sometimes we have already moved several visits to bigger locations like the West Auditorium and the Little Theater, Recital Hall, et cetera, because we anticipate a bigger group attending the visit. This is like a brief snapshot of those visits that we initially had when we first started the presentation. It's expanded quite significantly. And then this is what it looks like in Naviance. So we just gave Purdue as an example because it's this Wednesday afternoon. Basically, there's a date order list of all the rep visits within Naviance. Students can look through all those schools. We've encouraged them to do that. On the left-hand side is the date and the time. The name of the school is in the middle, along with the location right under it. And then students need to click that green button, that register button, which enables them to be registered. We know that they're planning to attend, and hopefully that reminds them to go talk to their teacher. So again, we hope it's a good, seamless system. It usually works out pretty well. And it's a really good opportunity for students to either relearn about the programs at a school or for the first time kind of get exposed to it. So we hope that it's helpful for both junior and senior students.
Okay, so we are now going to go deep dive into the application process. And I know this can be a lot of information. It can be overwhelming. As Dan had said, the slides and the recordings are going to be up shortly after our presentation at some point late next week. Many of us that did apply to school in the United States, some years ago, this process has changed quite a bit. So we're here to help you guys through that. Our general guidance to start with for students is they should be operating with a non-Stevenson email. I know even some of our students created Common App accounts with their Stevenson email. The issue is their email will get deactivated in June. I had some students say, you're gonna cancel us. I was like, oh, that's harsh. I mean, we're just gonna deactivate the email, it'll be okay. But we wanna make sure that they're using an email too that maybe is fresher. I know some of our kids maybe set up Gmail accounts like minecraftlover09@yahoo.com. We want like a new image for them going forward. And it can help kind of funnel that into an email box that they're ready to look for when they are, not clog up in other ways. They should be hopefully finalizing the list of schools that deserve their time and energy and money. And if you guys did a family meeting with me in the past year, I really say that a lot, and I mean it. Our students are busy. I have a sophomore and a junior here and a 21-year-old. I remember when he was here. They're busy, they've got a lot going on. We also want them to have some fun as well. And we want them to really finalize that list of schools that deserve their time and their energy and your money, right? It costs money to apply to most of these schools too. When we talk with them, we encourage them to create 3 categories of schools. Schools where we're unsure for admission. I don't like calling those reaches. I think it's unfair for our students to call those reaches. It's not that they aren't amazing and aren't capable of being admitted. It's simply these schools have too many well-qualified applicants, so it's unpredictable. And when they pull up the Naviance scattergrams and look at those, it's kind of a mix of colors. And then maybe cost-wise is a little high as a family. You have to see how things shake out in the financial aid packages or scholarship money. And we've got schools in the middle category where we would call targets. And they pull up the Naviance scattergrams, they're in mostly green, and you guys have talked as a family and it seems financially attainable. And then we have schools that we call safeties, where we'd be stunned that they wouldn't be admitted, to see a green, and that financially maybe is even below comfort costs and they can upgrade their residence hall a little bit, right? And the goal is to have a list of about 5 to 10 schools between those 3 categories. Now, we can see students definitely go into that more selective bucket and really start to go crazy with it. Sometimes I have students who just want to know, can I get in? I don't even really want to go to the school at all. I just want to see if I can get it. And as they start trying to collect the yeses, which sometimes we see, and the wonderments, it doesn't make it any easier to commit to one. You can only commit to one at the end. And as they add more schools into their categories, there's a lot more essays. I just talked to a student of mine a week or two ago who's applying to 20 schools, and she's like, each school has 4 to 5 essays. Whew, that's almost 100 essays, right? We want to hopefully cap it at the most 15, and to make sure that you have safeties and targets that you're excited about and you don't feel like they're consolation prizes. We also want them to find an organizational system that works for them. This is a QR code to one of ours. I think Ms. Hilly will drop one in the chat for the Zoom people. But this is a chart that students can use to help keep organized. I've seen some beautiful spreadsheets by parents. We need to ask for some of yours. I think they're even better than ours, but it gives you a helping hand to keep things organized. We want them to continue to learn about colleges, and instead of signing up for mailing lists, I'm telling kids now, maybe unsubscribe from the schools that you don't have interest in. My daughter's a sophomore. She's getting 2 pieces of mail every day already since early summer. So don't be afraid to unsubscribe from those schools that you don't have interest in, so you're not missing the stuff from the schools that you do have interest in. Okay, I'm admissions plans too, correct, Mr. Miller?
You got it.
Yes, there it is. Okay, I get carried away and I forget where I am. This is a new slide that we actually decided to put in this year because I think there's just so many plans and it's so hard to keep them straight. First and foremost, not every school offers, actually none of the schools offer all of these plans. This is part that why it got so hard to understand this process 30 years ago. We didn't have all these options, right? There's a plan called Early Decision. This is a big deal. This tends to be at really selective schools and usually private schools. So like a Vanderbilt or a WashU or a Northwestern offers Early Decision. It is a binding plan. So I use it and kind of flip the words around and tell students, you're deciding early. That's what you're doing, right? If the school says, yes, you're admitted, you have to immediately withdraw all your other applications. You don't get to find out other decisions, and you don't get to compare financial aid packages. There are some serious advantages to this. We can see some of these colleges now are admitting about half of their freshman class, if not more, through an early decision plan. But you also have to be okay with the trade-offs with it. Restrictive early action is not as common. A handful of the Ivy League offer this. Stanford and Notre Dame are the most common ones that we see. It's a weird plan. It's not binding. So if Harvard offers your students admission, they can say, no, thank you, I'm going somewhere else. They get to find out all their decisions. You get to compare financial aid packages. But they restrict how you apply to other schools. So if you're going to Stanford, you cannot apply early decision anywhere else if you're using an REA plan. And they will only let you use early action, and I'll go into that one in a little more detail, if it's a public school or if it's tied to scholarship money. It's really confusing. So a private school like University of Southern California offers early action tied to scholarship money. You could apply there. University of Chicago offers early action. Can't apply there, there's no scholarship money connected to that. So if you run into that plan as a family and you need help understanding it, please reach out to us and we can help you with that. Early action is what we're going to call normal. All students should be using early action deadlines. It is the best chances for admissions. It's usually at public schools. It is where scholarship money is tied. Often I'll have students say, I'm going to wait to apply regular for U of I want to focus on all these other colleges first. And then what they find out is U of I has given out all their spots, and so where they probably would have been an admit in November, they're now a deny in the regular round. So early action is really important at those public schools. And then regular is tied for Northwestern has early decision and they offer regular. That's the only 2 plans. So you're gonna go regular if you're not using ED. All the public schools, not all, most have early action and then a regular, should be using early action. And then rolling is a school like Iowa where they roll out decisions. All that means there's no formal deadline. You apply and you hear about 3 to 4 weeks later, depending on where you are in the cycle. So those are the different types of deadlines. We try to simplify deadlines for them because we know there's a lot of deadlines out there and that's the hardest thing is not to miss one. So we give them heavily recommended deadlines from Stevenson. Now, there's no penalty if they miss this deadline on our end. It's just our years of experience watching kids wait to the last week of a system where literally millions of 17-year-olds are trying to hit submit across the world. Inevitably, it crashes. So we encourage students to work about 2 weeks ahead of that deadline. So anything public, which is a good chunk of their list usually, and anything with early in the plan, which we covered, that's 3 plans that we just discussed, We encourage students to be done by October 15th. This will give them plenty of time to submit, usually in Common App. After they submit in Common App, they'll get an email from the college that says, congratulations on submitting your application. Now please create a portal link in our system. So then they would create something for U of I, for Miami of Ohio, wherever they apply. And when they go in there, if they've applied by October 15th, they can see all their stuff is going to get there in time. They'll have 2 weeks to kind of watch it all roll in. The closer they get to November 1st, the harder the human beings at the colleges have to upload all these things that are coming in at a rapid speed. So those students get very stressed that their stuff didn't get there on time. In addition, for some of the schools, and we'll talk about U of I, there may be additional things they need to do in that college's portal. For U of I, you submit in Common App, but then they have to self-report their grades. We'll talk more about that in the Illini portal. So there may be even additional steps in there. Again, it's best for scholarship money, and all students' parts should be submitted at this point. Teachers and counselors, which we'll get into, that are writing letters of rec, really have all the way up to the deadline to do that. They're managing a lot of those letters of rec. They're doing it in the evenings and weekends, so they have to write in order of deadlines, so they get all the way up to that point, and it does not hurt students in any capacity. The second major deadline is for everything else. There's not much left, honestly. It's private schools where you're using a regular deadline or a rolling deadline. We recommend that students should be done by the end of November. Now, students will say to us all the time, well, but the deadline is really January 1st. You're right, it is. But the month of December, we believe you should focus on your final experiences, make sure your grades are trending where you want them to be, and you can truly unplug over winter break. In addition, if they run into issues over winter break, there's not many of us around, if at all, to help them in that. So we do recommend to try to tidy up that 4-year process, turn the page of that chapter, and be ready to start enjoying their senior year and being done with the application process. If they're applying to a community college, they really have all the way up to March 1st to be considered for scholarship deadlines.
Okay, in terms of the ways to apply, there's a couple of different major options that students can choose from. The first is a school-specific method. What that means essentially is that the school created its own homegrown application, lives on their website. It can only be used by that school because the school created it for themselves, and you can go and use their online application. I'll pick on Indiana University. They have their own online application they have for a long time. That is certainly an option for students. Most schools will have their own kind of internal application just applicable for that institution. Our recommendation is to go with option 2, which is the common application, which we've kind of referenced before. It's accepted by over 1,000 different institutions around the world right now, making it super convenient that you're using the same general application to apply to all these schools. Now, many of the schools do have supplemental pieces of that application. The school creates their own kind of, they call it questions within the common application, where they'll ask maybe some short questions or maybe some somewhat longer, and by longer, maybe a couple hundred-word supplemental questions about various things we'll go over in a couple slides, but Common App can be very convenient. There's also another more widespread application called the Coalition application. For a number of years, until a couple years ago, there was always a couple schools that were what we called Coalition exclusive, meaning the only way to apply to those institutions was through this Coalition application. That has changed, where there's actually no longer any schools attached to the Coalition where that's the only way to apply. They have many different ways. If they have Coalition, they might have their own, they might also be on the Common App. I'll sort of skip QuestBridge for a second, but the first 3, kind of what our recommendation is we highly recommend using an organizational system, as we've kind of referenced already, where students can kind of map out for themselves, and we think this could be very helpful. What are the different methods to apply to any specific institution? And then what's the common denominator, right? What is the most common method? It's probably gonna be the Common App. That's a little bit of a hint. And then use that Common App, and then you don't necessarily need to use that internal institutional app or even the Coalition app. We think the Common App is probably the most straightforward application. We're very familiar with it. We can certainly help students with any application system, but we think that most students will be relying on that, and it's a very, very good system. QuestBridge is another type of application for students with certain qualifications in terms of academic achievement and financial potential challenges from their family. So I always encourage students, like, go to the QuestBridge website. You could just kind of Google QuestBridge, and they'll have certain criteria, and there's like 50 partnering institutions or something like that that have specific requirements of how to apply to them on their own timeline. That's sort of an additional method. But again, that second option, that Common App, is really probably the most straightforward again. And if they have multiple ways, this isn't like a guessing game or a strategy in terms of like what's going to increase your chances as a student to be admitted. Schools actually legally cannot have a preference of one system over another. So choose whatever's best for you, and if that's Common App, we think that makes a lot of good sense. Okay, some tips for students. The first tip is really kind of a common question we get from students. We're starting a program tomorrow morning called Drop-In Tuesdays. We'll talk about that in a couple minutes. And a lot of the questions we get during those drop-in sessions, especially early on in the fall semester, are related to like, what's required at the colleges that I'm applying to? We actually work with students of like, let's open the website. Let's go straight to where it says undergraduate admissions and look at what's called the admissions checklist, which literally articulates what are the actual requirements, and these are 3 examples we're giving you, of what does it take to actually submit a completed application for undergraduate admission, for freshman admission to my school. So I believe the left-hand side screenshot, again, I know it's probably really small font if you're looking at towards the back of the PAC, I believe is Ohio State University. I think the middle one is Marquette University, and I'm blanking on the one on the right. Do you remember, Ms. Hanson?
One of them is Madison.
Okay, that might be Wisconsin-Madison, or one of those are the 3. So basically, if you can't see it, they kind of walk through. They require transcripts, they require test scores, they require 2 essays. You'll need an extracurricular activities list. Some pieces might be optional. They'll make it very clear, and they articulate through these checklists, these are the steps that are required, and these are the steps that are more optional, and you can still complete a submitted application. So,
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to make sure we draw attention to the one on the left that says official ACT. That's a big deal. We'll get into the official part, but if you look at checklists as parents, this is a good place to help them. If it has the word official, they have to do something specific.
Yep, and we'll go over setting the test scores in just a moment. So if we want to just go back a slide for a second. So that's kind of that first bullet point, is looking straight on the college's website. Again, the website is the best source of information. If you have a third-party source, a friend, someone who just knows a lot, not the best source because they may not have the updated information. Colleges have the authority to update potentially this information anytime. So we go straight to the website. We also encourage students to use their legal name and whatever they're sending to schools. So whatever's on like a birth certificate, passport, their transcript here at Stevenson, that is really the best name to put forward. If they go by their middle name, they have a nickname, a pseudonym, whatever the case might be. Once a college gets a secondary piece of information with a different name, it'll actually duplicate their name in the system, making it really tough to complete the application file. So whatever's on that legal sort of information, school, government oriented, that's really what you want to move forward with sending to schools. What you see in front of you, if you can read the language on the screen, is kind of what some of the pieces that might be asked for. There typically are fees, unfortunately, to apply to each school. So those fees could rack up once you get to 20 to 30 applications. It's a pretty expensive activity. The transcript, will go over the ways to send the transcript in a moment. There could be an essay for the Common App or the supplemental essays I referenced. Potential letters of recommendation, we'll go over kind of that in just a moment. There could be sample work that's requested by a school. So what that could look like is a graded paper or project from a teacher. Again, it could depend on what program a student is applying to, but that is part of some applications. The test scores that Ms. Hanson just referenced, we'll talk about the ways to send test scores if they're included within an application. A potential resume of activities that's outside the actual application. They might want like an actual document, kind of seeing how students have outlined their various activities in high school. And then maybe an interview. This has kind of been dialed back the last 4 or 5 years since the pandemic kind of went on. That this is not as common as it is. We'll do like an interview workshop in the fall for students that might want to pursue one, but this is not a super common piece of the process.
So what is not optional is transcripts. And I would say this is one of the more confusing ways students have to kind of navigate of like, how does the college want my transcript? It isn't like you just pick the method and it goes. Each college has their own system, the way it works for them, and so they're going to request transcripts perhaps a few different ways. So what we tell students is work through this flow chart. You're going to start with asking your question, does the college require me to self-report my grades? University of Illinois, as I mentioned earlier, is one of those schools. So if they require self-reporting of the grades, that means the student has to go in line by line and report everything on their transcript, and we'll go into detail on that. It might be in Common App they do this, or they might have to do it in the school's own portal. If the answer is no, and the student used Common App or Coalition App, then they can thank their counselor, because the counselor will be automatically uploading the transcript in Common App for them, and that is how it goes. They don't self-report, and they're not using Common App or Coalition App, then they might need to use something called Parchment. It's a website that they go to. It's really straightforward, but I would say 99% of our students don't use Parchment in the fall. Something they'll need to do when they order their final transcript, which we'll go over in, but if they do need to use Parchment, they can come in and see us and we can help them through that process. To talk a little more about the self-reported academic record, belovedly called SRAR, it is a few different systems that they could use. There's a SARS system, there's also U of I's system or their own school system, and there's also a spot within Common App that they could potentially have to report their courses and grades. So whatever system the college wants is how they would need to go through it. They can access their transcript through Infinite Campus, so can you, under like the menu button, and I think it's reports or documents, it's in there. They have to go line by line and say, you know, World History Semester 1, I earned a B-, World History Semester 2, I earned an A-. We told them multiple times, this is not the place to be multitasking, watching TikToks or Netflix. I also told them, because I am a mom of 3 and I do have some nervous energy, this is a great place to enlist a parent who has that nervous energy that wants to help you. They can double check, they can look over it, they can make sure you put things correct. Because ultimately, if they are committing to a school where they self-reported their academic record, the final transcript goes, and if there's a discrepancy, as there is from time to time, we had one this past summer, admission can get revoked. So we want to make sure they're accurate with this. We are on a 4.0 weighted scale. This is the most frequent debated question we get every year. People don't think we know what we're talking about. We promise you it's a 4.0 weighted scale. This is how I explain it to those of you that are like, are you sure? Because I know some of you are out there asking me that right now. I liken it to a spelling test in 2nd grade when a student could get 108%, right? It's like a weighted GPA. We give bumps to AP and accelerated. Our base scale is 4.0. If we were on a 5.0 scale, we would give 1 point for Fs, and we do not. So we're on a 4.0 weighted scale, and they should put their cumulative highest GPA in Common App and in the systems. And yes, that can be above a 4.0. There's no conversion needed.
I anticipate we'll get at least 5 questions tomorrow morning about this very topic. Like 100%. It's just an inevitable topic that creates a lot of confusion, and we understand why. Because they're like, wait, my GPA or my grades are higher than that. Yes, we know, but it's still a 4.0 weighted scale. And if a student, because I got this question actually quite a bit a week ago Friday, if anyone's reported out to schools, your counselor will, and so does our school profile, correctly identify the 4.0 weighted scale. So don't worry, we've got your back, but we still want you guys to ideally correctly identify our system, which is a 4.0 weighted scale. Am I on? Okay, testing. So testing, interesting. What should you do about it? So you all, hopefully, everybody or your student, took that April SAT back in the spring, so many months ago. Maybe you've taken it a couple times, maybe you've taken the ACT. You're wondering, well, do I like my score? Do I want to send it to colleges? Is it required? Is it not? There's a big spectrum these days of what to do with testing. So the first question we really ask is, does the college have, well, really to ask yourself, what kind of testing policies exist at my institution, at the program that I'm kind of looking at? And there's that spectrum. The good news is, in that spectrum, let's focus on the middle part, the vast majority of colleges in the United States right now are test optional. They remain that way, which we think is great news. It gives you guys power, that choice of, do I want to share my SAT, my ACT score with colleges? If they have a test optional policy, you want to ask yourself, well, do I want to disclose it? Is that something I want to send? So we say, go to the source. Go to the college's websites. Every college has like a freshman profile from students that started probably last fall. Usually throughout the first semester, they'll update students that are starting fall 2024. So you'll probably see that fall 2023 information, probably not that different from fall 2024. And they'll have that, what's called that middle 50%, meaning what is the 25th to the 75th percentile for students that were admitted last year, kind of in the ACT, SAT range. Our advice tends to be, if a student's score in either test falls in that range, that middle 50% or above it, it makes pretty good sense to submit that test score, right? It's gonna bolster, strengthen that application. It's gonna look pretty favorable and help your chances for admission. If you're falling below that range, maybe even significantly below, and they have a test optional policy, we might say maybe don't send it. That's okay, you don't have to disclose it if they don't have it. It's not like a trick question. They just won't consider that part of the application when reviewing your file. And interestingly, and this is, I think, surprised both of us, is that admission rates have not been that statistically too different for students that have had either submitted or not submitted scores at most institutions over the last 4 or 5 years, which has been nice to see. So I think that the data is evidence that without the test score, you definitely still have a great chance of being admitted. So we also want you to consider scholarship opportunities. Some schools, it might be a little bit more transparent if submitting a test score could work in a student's favor. Some schools also have a test optional scholarship policy kind of grid or kind of policy. That's something to kind of pay attention to. We also put those middle 50% for test scores within our counselor notes, but I might even go straight to the website at this point because there might be some new information for schools throughout the fall. So that's the test optional piece. The other sort of side of things are schools that are called test blind. I don't actually really like that term. Test free is something I prefer to say. It just feels more inclusive. And those are schools or systems of schools that don't permit students to submit testing during the application process. So closer to home, Northern Illinois University is one test-free school, and the whole University of California system has not allowed a test score for a number of years, meaning there's no opportunity to include it, you can't send it. So I asked our rep at UCLA a couple years ago, like, what if a student was really proud of their SAT or ACT score and just wanted to like let you know that they got a great test score? Like what happens if they just send you an email? Like what do you do with that information? And our rep, interestingly, responded to us and said, well, I would say like, dear student, thank you for sharing your test score. By law in the state of California, I now have to delete your email. End of story. Which I thought was a really interesting response, right? They can't consider it, they don't want evidence of it, they don't want to hang on to it, it's not part of their system, so they just remove it completely. So they wanted to respond politely to the student, but it's just not part of their review process. There's a website called fairtest.org, which if you want to nerd out on this topic, which we like to do sometimes, you might want to go to that website, which gives a really good comprehensive review of like test optional school policies and kind of the state of standardized testing today when it comes to admissions. So that might be something to check out. In terms of reporting test scores, so the good news is that there's a lot of colleges out there that just allow you to self-report your scores, kind of like Ms. Hansen was talking about with the transcript. You just kind of share in the application. They'll ask you on the Common App and there are systems out there, are you submitting your test score? And if so, what did you get and when did you take that SAT or ACT? Now, if you get admitted and you enroll in that school, they're going to want proof of it. As a heads up, they're going to want you to send in that official score report from the College Board or from the ACT. But you simply just self-report it within the application and or through the admissions portal that Ms. Hansen was talking about. It might be in a variety of different places. If that is not the case, the college could have an official test scoring policy. What does that mean? It basically means it's between you and the testing agency to have your test score sent through the testing agency to your institution or your program of choice. We do not put your test score on your transcript. We do not send your test scores on your behalf. That's something you have to choose to do. So we gave you a couple of examples, Ohio State, Wisconsin-Madison, Mizzou, where you have to log into that to the testing agency website, which is probably the hardest part of this process. Remember that darn password, log into College Board, log into ACT, and then choose the test date you're looking to send, have their credit card ready, because there is a fee to send the score to each school. So again, these are where the fees kind of add up a little bit if you're applying to a lot of schools. And it takes a little bit of time. There's a processing delay, because schools send scores in batches, and it's just a little bit of a slow process, so just kind of be patient in this process. Students and families, hopefully, but at this point you sign up directly on the college's or the testing site websites, and there's some upcoming test dates, SAT in early October, and ACT in a couple weeks, mid-September, and in late October here at Stevenson. So some opportunities to kind of retest if that's something you're looking to do.
And I'm gonna add just a little bit more because every year this is a heartache for me, and we send emails to the kids telling them over and over again, sending official test scores from the testing agency is not quick. It's not like Amazon where I can order tonight and it shows up in my door at 4 a.m., right? This takes weeks for the testing agencies to send it over to the schools and for the schools to have the time to upload it and show that it's in the portal. This is an area that stresses kids out. Ohio State every year will say, hey, we have these 20 kids that applied with a test score but has not sent us our official test score. If we don't receive that test score by November 1st, they'll no longer be in consideration for scholarship money. So we're constantly emailing kids saying, send your test scores, send your test scores, send your test scores. And if they do it the week before, there's almost a guarantee it will not get there. And it doesn't matter if you pay for the extra rush fee, it's not gonna get there in time. So as a parent, if you can help them, if they're sending test scores and they see that word official, start sending those scores tonight so the kid doesn't get kicked out of that deadline.
The next sort of different topic is a part of the application called FERPA. By a show of hands, hopefully you guys as students remember what we talked about a week ago, but who as family members, anyone in the room, has heard of the FERPA acronym? Well, sounds familiar-ish. I feel a couple students that are like iffy. Well, a little bit of a refresh if you want some more information. So FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It's a federal privacy law that essentially asks one major overarching question when it comes to the application process. And when you get to the FERPA screen, it has to get to it'll be very clear because they're gonna say, hey, you gotta read some stuff, make sure you understand what you're reading, you click OK, and then you have to basically answer one question, which is, do you as a student, or does your student want to or not want to waive your rights to review your letters of recommendation? So do you wanna waive your rights or do you not wanna waive your rights to potentially review those letters of recommendation? It's a question you answer one time, and our strong recommendation is that students do waive their rights for a couple reasons. First of all, it does potentially give the colleges and the recommenders a little bit more confidence that whatever the recommender who is writing on your behalf knows that it's between them and the institution, right? They know you won't have access to it. If they've said yes to you, I can assure you they will write a very positive letter, but it kind of just gives more confidence in that process kind of in general. The other thing is if students don't waive their rights, it's typically the practice of our teachers and our staff, they don't give out letters as they're kind of writing them to students. So therefore a student would have to go to wherever they end up going to college, and the college would have to have a policy in place, probably at their records or admissions office, saying they just give out the letters of recommendation when students show up on campus. Unfortunately, that's not a common practice. I'd say that's pretty unusual, because at that point, that letter supported you getting accepted, you getting enrolled, and you're there, so they'll probably just say it's in our records office. We don't really give that out, that information. So it's ultimately something for students to think about. It's, again, that one-time decision that students have to make during the application process, but again, our strong recommendation is that it's probably in students' best interest to waive their rights so they won't have that ability to review their letters of recommendation.
When I polled the students, when I talked with them, most of them seem to have started asking teachers about letters of rec. A couple of reminders that we gave out in the spring as well is one, make sure you need them before you ask. U of I won't take any letters of rec. Many schools will not as part of the process. If you found students that you over-asked, we reminded them, like, go back and tell the teacher, if you haven't written it, I don't need it. Because we do know that teachers often have to put a cap on how many letters they can actually do. And every year we have a student who can't find a teacher to write because they've all capped out. So we always ask teachers or students to adhere to the minimum, not the maximum letters. Admissions tells that over and over again. They don't need 5 amazing letters. If they want 1 to 5, 1 is plenty. So make sure you have what you're looking for. Typically it's only 1 to 2 if they want it from a core teacher. That's English, math, science, social studies, or world language. They've had a little more recently because freshman year they've changed quite a bit as we've witnessed as parents, right? They may allow for an other recommender, and other is where that club sponsor, employer, or an elective teacher like business, engineering, art might come into play. A counselor letter is different. Counselors do not automatically write letters for all of their seniors. Some schools require a counselor letter, and so the student will fill out something called a brag sheet for the counselor. It's electronic, and we provided them that link, where they would go in and fill that out and make an appointment with the counselor and request the letter. And they'll get more details on that. When is
Thursday.
Thursday, that's right.
Thursday morning.
They'll be meeting with their counselors to talk more about that. The teachers, there's a reflection form that we had for them. It's electronic, and we have copies in the CCC, and it's on our website they would complete for them. They should provide a list of colleges and the deadlines. We also tell them to ask at least 3 weeks in advance. I always tell students by homecoming, have everything in place, if not sooner. And always follow up with that thank you note. Essays, everybody's favorite topic, and we literally could spend a whole hour on this, and I know we're already at 7:50, so hang on with us. I'll give you some quick tips in here. We had 7 tips. I don't know why it wasn't 5 or 10, but we came up with 7. Optional isn't really optional in most cases. And we'll talk about the ones that are, but if a school gives you an optional personal statement, a student should write that, like Illinois State has one. It shows that you're a more serious applicant. Answer the prompt. That seems obvious, but students often are putting so many other information that they think the college wants to hear, and they don't actually answer the prompt. Have someone proofread. Parents, no offense. We tell them to have someone who's not a parent proofread. We encourage them to share their essays with you. I think it's great to see their thoughts. But we want someone who doesn't know them well to say, this is what I learned about you. Is this what you wanted to share? It should be the student's voice shining through. We caution them with AI. Maybe that can help you cut down your word count, but it should not be used to write your essays. That's plagiarism, but it can maybe help you edit your essays a little bit. And quality is always better than quantity. They need to give time for the process. And we always tell them have someone who maybe can proof grammar for you. They want to go to college, not collage. I see that a lot. We always tell a famous story about a student who wrote an essay for Common App about his favorite pastime of hunting pheasants with his dad and his grandpa. And he hunted pheasants with them. They ate the pheasants, they stuffed the pheasants, they cooked the pheasants, but they forgot the H in pheasants, and that made it very memorable in a bad way because peasants makes the story very different. So we want to make sure that those things are caught. And our biggest tip is the 1/3, 2/3 rule, which we'll talk more about on this screen. And what we say about that is the easier part of an essay to write is about the details, right? They get into the descriptiveness, they talk about an event or a person or whatever it is, and they write that and they get 650 words about the details of all of this, and then they're like, I'm done, I hit the word count. And then we go to read it and it's like, I know a lot about the events, I don't know what it meant to you, right? So we talk about the 1/3, 2/3 rule, and we always give the example to them. If you're writing about an influential person in your life, let's say it's your grandmother, the whole essay can't be about how amazing your grandmother is. They're gonna wanna admit your grandmother, right? 1/3 of the essay is your grandmother, and 2/3 of it is who you are because she was in your life, because of that event. Who are you? How do you operate differently than someone who didn't have that experience with that person? The why us question is a big deal. You're gonna see that a lot for the more selective schools. Madison has this. And I always tell students they don't wanna know that you've been a Badger fan since 3, going to the football games in the red and white striped jumper, right? They wanna know, why are you excited about attending their school academically? What things do you wanna get involved in? What do you wanna do? It's their way of gauging your level of interest. Why this major? U of I always jokes, they don't wanna know our engineering majors have loved Legos since the age of 5. Like, that's a common thing they read. They wanna know what in high school has made you excited about this major. Additional information is truly the optional section. This is at the bottom of the Common App after the 650-word writing prompt, where they can share things that haven't already been shared. This is a great place for a student that had like a hiccup on their transcript, I call it, a grade that doesn't match the others or a semester that looks a little off. It could also be a disclosure about an IEP or a 504, some of the obstacles that they've had to work through that other students haven't had to. I've also encouraged students this year, because most of you know the woes of testing. It's been really hard to get an SAT in the area. It's true in the nation. We're just finally caught up with everybody else who's been having issues, that they can share that there, that I wanted to take the SAT again, but there hasn't been a testing site in a 100-mile radius for me. They can include that in that spot too.
Okay, Common App, we've kind of referenced this already, but a few quick things and even a reminder that we're on that 4.0 scales. I just realized just tonight that we said that twice, but it's that important that we wanted to put it on 2 different slides. We want our students to be adding schools to the Common App. Hopefully you as a student or your student has been already doing that. Selecting those deadlines, so selecting that admission plan, which helps the recommender know like in what part of the cycle you're kind of targeting to get that application done. And as we've already shared, we want you guys as students or your student to be talking to the recommenders sooner than later, just to kind of get the ball rolling, make sure they're talking to their counselor, getting that brag sheet filled out, talking to their teacher, ideally in person. I can speak for the counselors and all the faculty that, you know, when a counselor or teacher gets one of those brag sheets or reflection forms digitally or just sent to them and to their email without having a face-to-face conversation, it becomes a little bit more challenging to help support writing that letter because they didn't have a chance to touch base and connect. So we really encourage students, like, please connect with those humans that you're serving as your recommenders, ideally at some point in the next month or so. And again, as we said, make that appointment with them and fill out those required pieces. In terms of inviting your counselor and your teacher, it's actually a pretty straightforward process. Similar for counselors and teachers with one additional step for teachers. So for counselors, it's really as simple as just putting in your school counselor's name and Stevenson email address in correctly. Spelled correctly is key, because if you spell it obviously one letter off, they're never gonna get that email. Once you hit submit, it'll prompt the Common Application system to send your counselor an email saying you've invited them as a student to your Common Application party, and they will then be able to upload the Stevenson materials, potentially a letter of recommendation if it's required, the school report, and so on. With the teacher, it's the same process. You still invite your teacher by including their name in Stevenson email, but then you have to do one extra step, which we put in green, which is assign them. The reason for that is because I kind of describe this process for teachers like the teachers will be uploading the letter kind of like to the Common App cloud. Once it gets to the cloud, Common App needs to know where to send that letter, because not all schools, even many schools do not take teacher letters of recommendation, so they have to kind of be routed specifically. So by clicking that assign button, it's kind of telling the Common App cloud to send it to particular schools that you're kind of directing it to. And it's kind of the same process. University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, it gets its own slide because it's traditionally been our most popular school. We'll probably see, I'm sure about half of our student body, if not more, apply to it. That's our guess. If you've been hounding your student about why they haven't been working on that U of I application, well, it hasn't actually opened yet. So give them a little bit of a break. It'll open up in a couple days, September 1st. But as we kind of shared earlier, they do allow self-reported test scores, and they do have a requirement to self-report the transcript through the Mundelein portal that we referenced earlier. We heavily encourage, as we suggested earlier in the presentation, to apply to schools like UIUC through early action. Again, at Stevenson, that's heavily recommended to do October 15th, and students will then hear at the end of January about their notification for admission. The biggest piece of the process that takes the time is really self-reporting that transcript, which again, I think we've alluded in this presentation, parents or guardians, it's potentially something good to kind of support your student. It's totally okay to make sure attention to detail is really the focus there. And there's a couple essay prompts that students need to complete based on if they are applying to one or a couple majors. We recommend applying to 2 majors to increase their chances for admission to preferred areas of study that they're looking at.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about money. We also polled them how many students, how many of your parents are asking to start looking for scholarships, and rest assured the majority of them raised their hands, so the message is getting through to them. There are definitely ways to look at outside scholarships. I think we're pretty transparent that the largest amount of scholarship money honestly comes from the colleges itself. If they offer scholarship money, it tends to be a larger amount, and it's renewable over 4 years. So maybe at Miami of Ohio, they get an $8,000 scholarship that turns into $32,000 after 4 years. The outside scholarships can be competitive. The deadlines are all over. It might be, 5 for anybody in the nation. Not that we're discouraging it. We just remind families it does tend to be a smaller amount, and it's not usually renewable. But there are free databases out there like FastWeb and Adlai they could look at. We put things in Naviance. We often will put things out in the Daily Digest. I think we just advertised about Wells and Jefferson and Pearson for University of Toronto. We encourage you to check into your own communities, so religious organizations, credit unions, employers sometimes sponsor scholarships. We'll talk about the Stevenson Foundation in a second. And I just mentioned that last one. So the Stevenson Foundation, which is a separate entity from the high school, is a nonprofit that works with us. They have about $60,000 of scholarship money earmarked just for Stevenson students from area businesses, foundations, memorials. And that always opens up in January. And there'll be email notifications to the students. There's an application they would go online and complete to be considered for those. And I should mention, we don't have a slide in here about the FAFSA. We have a date coming up. If you don't know already, the FAFSA is officially delayed for your students. It will open up December 1st. We have a lot more hope that this is going to go much smoother for you guys because they're doing some beta testing in October, November. So just know that the FAFSA will be opening up in December 1st. We offer a lot of group programming for our students. Am I stealing your slide, Mr. Miller? No, I'm not.
Nope, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. And we've shared this with our students. We'll email blast them constantly. We're not shy about sharing the fact there's 2 of us and 1,200 students all kind of going through this process. So we do our best to be available to our students and help them in any way, shape, or form. But we do a lot of group programming just to be able to see more students in a day. So we have something very popular for our students called Drop-In Tuesdays. They start tomorrow morning. We are in the College Career Center, 1123 for these. And students do not need an appointment. They can pop in at any point before school, and they can pop in 8th period if they don't have a class, as the majority of our students don't, to ask questions. We staff it not just ourselves. We usually have a handful of people down there. They bring their iPad. We're helping them out with any questions that they have. Some students love just hanging out there. It does become kind of a hangout place for seniors where they hear questions and they're like, oh, I didn't know that. Like it just becomes a place to kind of hang out too. The only thing we won't do during that time, and we're really strict about it, are essay reads. We want to see 20, 30, 40 kids in that space quickly. So essay reads we want to do individually and talk to them individually. There is a mandatory, and that sounds scary, but early decision session for our students during the school day if they're considering an early decision plan. We want to make sure they understand what that means. It is offered 8 times every half lunch and before and after school, so we ask that they come to one of those and they'll sign a little form at the end for their counselor. We do essay writing workshops. Those are more brainstorming. We offer Common App workshops. We just did one, and I think I had about 40 or 50 students come in. We were pretty packed in the CCC that morning. There's another one coming up. We have an insider admissions tip for University of Illinois. We do a University of California system application workshop. I will be doing that one. I'm going to be recording it because I know it's 8th period and it's the only time we're offering it, so I'll make sure that students have access to that. And then Mr. Miller will be doing an interview. We call it a workshop. We probably should call it a panel, to be honest. But we bring in people who actually do interviews for colleges. Typically, we have somebody from like MIT and Duke,
WashU,
Harvard, and WashU that come in and talk to students about what to expect in that process, if that is something that they do. Those are a little more rare, and that will also be recorded. How students can meet with us individually as well. They can schedule essay reads with us. We are a little strict with they can only schedule one appointment at a time with us, and the reason for that being is every year we have a handful of kids that were like, I'd like to meet with you 8th period every Wednesday, and it's like, well, that's not fair. So they can make an appointment and then have the appointment as they walk out the door, they can make another one. I do tell students, I know Mr. Miller does too, we can book up the closer we get to October. It may take 3 weeks to get in to see me during a time that's free for them. You can't call them out of class. I'm sorry, we're not allowed to do that. But sometimes I tell them just make the appointment 3 weeks out, and then that's your due date to get your essay done, and that can help them kind of manage their time too. And we're not the only ones that can do essay reads. The ILC, the ELC can offer that. Even their own counselor or perhaps their English teacher are often willing to read for them as well. General questions are usually best for drop-in Tuesdays because they can pop in, ask a quick question, and then head back out and when they're done. New this year, we're going to do open office hours as well, which is a little confusing, but those are on Thursdays and in our respective offices. So my office is on the east side, student services. Mr. Miller is on the west side in green, student services. So on Thursdays, they could pop into our offices for that. And then most of you, many of you, have done something called a post-secondary scope meeting. This is a 45-minute family planning meeting to help generate a list of colleges. If you've already done one, unfortunately, we've had some questions. You can't do a second one. We have a waiting list of families that we're getting through right now for their first one. But if your student is still at the phase where they need a list of colleges, they're not really sure where to start, this is the meeting that maybe you want to consider. There's a worksheet they would complete, and you can contact the CCC. We can get that worksheet to you. And then once they turn that in, you'll get an calendar, access to our calendars to schedule that individual meeting that we will meet for 45 minutes.
Okay, so some updating calendar dates, and a lot of these, actually all of these, are on the handout that you picked up, which is also on the website, our senior timeline, but just to kind of go over a couple of important nights that we've referenced that are really good resources depending on what your student's looking for. Starting at the top, September 5th, coming up soon, all the local high schools, largely North Suburban Conference schools, but a few other schools have jumped on the bandwagon. We kind of rotate and do like an informational program around NCAA, so if your student's interested in being a prospective college student athlete, they'll do an information meeting about that and bring in a guest speaker who's an expert at NCAA recruitment. It'll be conveniently not too far away at Libertyville High School. At the end of September, in about a month, we're gonna do a financial aid night right here in this space where we're going to bring in our friend and colleague, Mr. Jerry Sabrinsky, who's the head of financial aid at Lake Forest College. He's been coming here for decades. Truly a national expert on the topic. So he's gonna come to kind of talk about the state of financial aid and kind of the preview of how that FAFSA is opening up in December and other kind of cool tidbits. We always learn a ton from Jerry. Early October, October 5th and 6th, are 2 national college fairs, which basically means they're big in very big spaces. October 5th is a Saturday, it'll be at Navy Pier in Chicago. October 6th is Sunday, we'll be at the Wisconsin State Fair Park. It sounds like it's outdoor, but I'm almost positive it's an indoor facility. That's how it's been in the past in Milwaukee. If your student has an IEP or a 504 plan and they're looking to connect with the offices on campuses that offer supports in terms of accommodations. It's called the Choices College Fair, which kind of facilitates that program, which will be at Niles North High School on October 8th. The following night will be the first of 4 of our first generation U.S. undergraduate admission night. So if your student is first gen, meaning they are the first in your family to go to college either in general, which is kind of the classic definition, or the first to go to a U.S. college potentially. This night is really geared for families. We've been building up this program for about 5 years, and we have 4 of them, the first of which is on October 9th. October 15th, we've gone over, you hopefully are familiar, that's our internal, highly recommended deadline for any public schools. And then October 17th is a college fair up at the College of Lake County. They only do one once a year now. They used to do one in the fall and spring, but now it's just in the fall semester. November 7th is our second of 4 first-gen nights for the year. And then November 30th is that date you might be familiar with. It's kind of the recommended deadline for all of their 4-year schools. December 1st is what we've just alluded to, the 25-26 free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, will open up for students looking to go to college in 2025. We'll do a December 17th FAFSA night. Or if you're looking to fill out the alternative application for financial aid, basically it's a night to get support. Here at school, we'll send details out closer to that program date of how to sign up for an appointment time with some FAFSA experts. We mentioned in a previous slide that the Stevenson Foundation Scholarship application will open up sometime in January, probably beginning of next year. If you're a student or you as a student are thinking of taking a year off between high school and college, or a gap year, there'll be a gap year fair. It's actually the biggest in the country, or at least it historically has been. And there'll be one at New Trier High School, the Winnacunnet campus, on January 28th, which I think is a Saturday. We'll do a summer job fair. So if you as a student, or if you have younger students that are looking to get a job for summer 2025, that's weird to think about, good to plan ahead. We'll do a job fair here at school. We do it during the lunch period, so students can come during their lunch and connect with employers in the community. It's usually a really cool event. March 1st is our recommended deadline to apply to community colleges like College of Lake County or Harper College. And then March 5th, we've shared, is that Career Ready Trades Expo. And then May 1st, for you guys, class of 2025, is hopefully the end of the process. That's the deadline that all colleges kind of give students to let them know if you're accepting their offer of admission. That's kind of the universal candidate reply date for students. Our website is pretty awesome. Sometimes it can be a little tricky to find some things if you're looking around, but we are really proud of the work we do with our website. We're updating it what feels like every day with links and resources. We'll put this presentation and this recording on our website very soon. We're always kind of trying to improve it, so we're never fully really happy with it. So please utilize it. There's buttons on the main page. There's a great career exploration page as well, so we encourage you to take advantage of it. We encourage your student to subscribe to the Senior Canvas page where this presentation lives, and all of our resources also live for students. If that's something that, I know you guys can follow students. I don't know if that's something you're interested in doing as well, but you can check out our Canvas page. And we are on social media, and we always joke, until a couple years ago, the only people that followed us on our Facebook page were our own parents. That's no longer totally true. We have some Stevenson parents that follow us as well. If you want to follow us on Facebook, we try to put stuff out there. We also have an Instagram that we kind of connect the two. And then we have a pretty growing YouTube channel, actually, that we're really proud of. We've been adding a lot of short videos on a variety of topics, specifically for the First Gen series, highly selective admission, financial aid, community college. So if you're looking to get a couple minutes on different topics related to the college admissions process, we've thrown that on our YouTube channel, so feel free to subscribe.
And I will say the Canvas page is great for students if they need to know, when are our workshops? How do I email them? How do I schedule an individual appointment with them? We have so many resources in that Canvas page for them. It's like their one-stop shop.
And some kind of last parting thoughts we think you guys should stick with us. We know this is a late evening on the beginning of a week, but we always tell students, don't wait to apply because you haven't visited. We hear that all the time in our offices, oh, I can't apply there, I haven't seen the campus. Well, that's okay. Hopefully down the road you can try to get to the school. We're a big proponent of visiting schools, but it's just unrealistic to visit all the schools that are kind of on your radar. We remind them that, again, in this day and age when we text people, we send them emails. Did you get my email? Are you responding to my email? Did you get my text? Did you get my phone call? That's not really how this process works, unfortunately. There's just so much input that goes into this, and colleges, it just takes a long time for them to process it all correctly and make sure it aligns to specific students to complete applications. So we encourage patience during a process that takes several months, we know. We encouraged your students when we met with them 10 days ago to kind of practice adulting. Hopefully you've been talking to them about that a little this year, like using that alarm clock, doing a little cooking in the kitchen, their laundry, sort of some independence, because we told them this time next year, this is when moving to colleges is happening. I mean, I was down in Champaign this weekend, and there were students moving in left and right. It's like, this will happen a year from now. This will be a reality for a lot of your, if not most of your students. So to practice that now in a safe space, it's a good idea. So we highly recommend kind of exercising that sort of independence. And we are resources for you guys, right? Like hopefully you can tell this, we love our jobs, we love what we do. We try to offer as much as we humanly can during the school day and try to be available for students. So we encourage you guys as students and as families to be in touch with us and to encourage your students to attend our programming. Like we have built out this calendar so that we've tried to think through all the different times that we can connect with you guys, and we just encourage you to be partners with us to help us help your students.
And we definitely encourage you to put your student in the driver's seat. You will see sometimes you'll reach out to us with questions and we'll say, let's have your student make an appointment with us so we can go through it. I know it's hard, again, being a parent of 3 kids myself. You want to do for them for so many reasons, but they need to figure out how to go through this process, how to email, how to communicate, how to make the deadlines, how to send the information. And it will help them be more successful when we're not there next year and they're off being independent doing this. It is an honor to help them in this process. Dan and I love working with them really kind of at the beginning of that junior year, second semester, and we see this evolution this year and watch them where they commit to in just a handful of months. So thank you for trusting us to help them in the process. And thank you guys for coming out tonight. And those on Zoom, we had about 300 and I think 15-ish families on Zoom. So I hope you guys are doing well in the heat, better than what my hair is tonight. So thank you guys for coming.
Get home safely. Thank you. Good night.